Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at something pretty major for understanding India.
Mm-hmm.
The Union Cabinet has decided to include caste in the next national census.
Yeah, that's right. And it's the first time they're doing this comprehensively in almost a century.
A century, that's huge. It could really change how we see India's social fabric.
Absolutely. And for those of you listening who are preparing for the UPSC exams, this is definitely one to watch.
Oh, for sure. Why specifically for UPSC aspirants?
Well, it hits social justice, policy making.
Yeah.
That's your mains paper right there.
Right.
And then the history, the current affairs angle, crucial for prelims too. You really need to understand the context.
And the timing. Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Just before the Bihar Assembly election.
It is. And we've been hearing more and more calls, especially from opposition parties, for exactly this updated caste data for policy,
To tackle inequality better, presumably.
Precisely. So, okay, our mission today in this deep dive is to unpack all of this.
Yeah, let's get into the significance, the history behind it, what impacts it might have.
And the challenges, because there will be challenges.
Definitely. We're drawing heavily on that recent report in the Hindu for this.
It's source.
So let's maybe start with the big question.
Mhm.
What does bringing back this kind of caste counting really mean for social justice, for reservations, for India's future?
That really is the core question. And to get it, you kind of need to look back first.
History lesson time.
A quick one. Look, counting caste isn't new. The British did it.
Right, from 1881.
Yep, 1881 right up to 1931, that 1931 census. That's the key one. It's the last time we got official, published, detailed caste data for everyone.
Almost 100 years of missing data since then.
Yeah.
Wow. I heard they collected it in 1941, though.
They did, but World War II happened and the data just never got published. Lost to history, essentially.
And then after independence,
Mm.
India consciously decided not to count everyone by caste.
Exactly. The focus shifted. They only continued counting scheduled castes, SCs, and scheduled tribes, STs, for, administrative purposes, reservations, that sort of thing.
But that 1931 data still lingered, didn't it? It had a massive afterlife.
Oh, huge. You remember the Mandel Commission back in the 80s?
Of course. Big turning point for OBC reservations.
Well, guess what data they used?
The 1931 census. Still.
You got it. They estimated that OBCs were about 52% of the population based on that nearly 50-year-old data. And that led directly to the 27% OBC quota.
Incredible that such old data formed the basis for such a major policy. So what about more recently? Didn't they try something in 2011? The SEC?
Ah, yes, the Socioeconomic and Caste Census 2011. Good memory. It was an attempt, definitely.
But it didn't quite deliver on the caste front, did it?
No, not really. The socioeconomic data was useful, but the caste part, it was problematic.
How's that?
They used an open-ended format. People could basically write in anything for their caste.
Oh.
Yeah. Led to something like over 4.6 million different entries. Caste names, subcaste, gotras, clan names.
The complete mess for analysis, I imagine.
Exactly. Cleaning it, standardizing it, it proved almost impossible. So that caste data from 2011 wasn't really usable for policy in the end. A missed opportunity, you could say.
Okay, so that brings us back to now, this new decision to include it in the main census. What are the stated goals this time? Why do it properly now?
Well, several key reasons. The big one is informed policymaking.
Makes sense. You need to know who's who and what their situation is.
Precisely. If you want to target welfare programs effectively or allocate development funds fairly, you need a clear picture of the current demographics. You can't rely on 1931 data forever.
So better targeting of government schemes. What else?
Reservations, that's obviously a huge part of this.
Right, to potentially reassess the existing quotas.
Exactly. The current quotas are based on old data or projections. This new census could provide, the actual empirical evidence needed for a fresh look.
A look at whether the percentages are right, who needs them most.
All of that. It could lead to some very significant discussions, maybe even changes, so that's a whole other process.
We'll get to the potential impacts later. Any other main objectives?
Social justice, more broadly. The idea is to get a more detailed understanding of the socioeconomic conditions of all caste groups.
Including within the big categories like OBC, SC, ST.
Yes, exactly. To bring visibility to maybe smaller, more marginalized groups within those larger umbrellas, it helps make governance more inclusive.
So it's fundamentally about evidence-based governance, using real data.
That's the goal. Good data for policy, good data for academic research, a clearer picture of society.
Okay, now let's talk politics. This decision, it felt a little surprising to some, didn't it, given the current government's past stance?
It did raise some eyebrows, yes. The BJP has historically been, shall we say, wary of emphasizing caste in politics, often framing it as divisive.
They've talked more about national unity, Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas.
Right. But the political ground seems to have shifted a bit.
How so? What changed?
Well, look at what's been happening at the state level. Bihar, Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka. They've conducted their own caste surveys recently.
Ah, yes. And those surveys showed pretty high numbers for backward classes, didn't they?
Very high, often over 60%, sometimes pushing 70% depending on the state and classification.
And that fueled demands for more representation, higher quotas.
Absolutely. It put pressure on the national stage. So you could see the center's move now as perhaps a way to engage with that narrative.
A strategic move, maybe?
Yeah,
To counter opposition campaigns focused on social justice and caste.
that's certainly one interpretation. It allows the government to be seen as addressing these demands directly based on its own comprehensive data collection. It sort of takes ownership of the issue.
Interesting political dynamics.
Okay.
Okay, so let's pivot to the potential impact, especially on reservations. You mentioned the state surveys putting pressure on the 50% cap set by the Supreme Court.
Yes, that's a critical point, especially for UPSC folks to track. That 50% ceiling from the Indrasani judgment has been the rule for decades.
But the state data challenges it.
It does. Take Karnataka, for example. Their survey suggested OBCs might be close to 70% of the population.
Wow.
Yeah. And immediately, there were calls to increase the OBC quota there, which is currently 32%, up to something like 51%, way over the combined 50% limit.
And if the national census shows similar patterns across many states,
Then you can expect similar demands to pop up everywhere. Pressure will mount significantly to reconsider that 50% cap at the national level.
which could lead to legal battles, constitutional questions.
Definitely. It could potentially open up the entire reservation framework for debate and possible restructuring.
Yeah.
Very complex, very significant. Again, keep an eye on this for your mains prep.
Understood. Now, doing this, actually
Yeah.
conducting a national caste census,
Yeah.
it sounds incredibly difficult. What are the big hurdles?
Oh, the challenges are massive. Implementation is where this gets really tricky.
Like what? What's the first big problem?
It's classification. How do you actually list and code every single caste and subcaste across India?
With all the regional variations, different names, different languages.
Exactly. Creating a national caste directory that's accurate, comprehensive, and standardized. It's a monumental task. Remember the SECC mess. They need to avoid that.
Okay, so classification is number one. What else?
Then you have the issue of overlaps and lists. Different states have their own lists of OBCs.
Right. And sometimes a community might be OBC in one state, but maybe SC or ST or general in another, or classified differently by the center versus the state.
Precisely. Reconciling the central list and the state lists, dealing with communities demanding inclusion in SC or ST lists instead of OBC, it creates disputes. Who belongs where? It's not always clear-cut.
Sounds like a bureaucratic and potentially political nightmare.
It has that potential, yes. Which brings us to the political sensitivities,
Deciding who gets counted under which category.
which is hugely political. Decisions about inclusion or exclusion, especially right before elections, are bound to be controversial. There will be lobbying, protests, political jockeying. It's almost guaranteed.
And one more practical point, the timeline. This isn't happening tomorrow, is it?
No, not at all. We still haven't even had the main census that was due in 2021. It was postponed, remember?
Due to the pandemic, yeah.
So the fieldwork for this hasn't even been scheduled yet. Collecting the data, processing it, publishing it, it's going to take time. This data won't be available immediately.
So patience is needed. Okay, stepping back then. Looking ahead. What's the big picture takeaway here? Is this a genuine turning point?
I think it could be. Look, deciding to include caste enumeration properly in the national census, it's a landmark step, no doubt about it.
It signals a shift towards...
Towards potentially a more data-driven approach to social policy, acknowledging that we need current data to understand and tackle deep-seated inequalities.
But it needs careful handling.
Extremely careful. Accuracy is paramount. They need robust methods to avoid the SECC pitfalls and also manage the process sensitively to avoid, increasing social fragmentation.
And getting from data to actual policy changes, that's another long road.
A very long road, most likely. Political consensus, legal reviews,
Oh, yeah.
translating this data into revised policies, if it happens, will take considerable time and effort.
But still, a potentially crucial moment.
I'd say so. A potential turning point in how India tries to frame and achieve more inclusive governance. Anyone studying India's socio-political landscape, especially for UPSC, needs to understand this moment.
Absolutely. This has been really clarifying, so much to consider for everyone listening, especially UPSC aspirants. This connects the dots, doesn't it? History, policy, current events, social justice.
It really does. And think about how you can use this. For mains, it's about showing you understand the nuances, the historical context, the potential impacts. For prelims, it's about tracking the facts, the key decisions, the potential legal challenges.
Keep following the developments.
Yeah.
Okay, so to wrap up this deep dive, we've looked at the historic decision to bring caste back into the census after nearly a century. We've explored the historical context, why the 1931 data was so important, why the 2011 attempt fell short.
We've discussed the objectives, better policy, reassessing reservations, social justice, and the political shifts that might be behind this move.
And we've highlighted the potential shockwaves for reservation policy, especially that 50% cap, along with the very real implementation challenges, classification, lists, politics, timing.
It's a big, complex picture.
It really is. And maybe it leaves us with a final thought for you, the listener, to ponder.
Go for it.
Beyond just reservations, which is obviously huge, how might having this kind of detailed, comprehensive caste data reshape our entire understanding of social and economic inequality in India as we move through the 21st century? What else might we learn?
That's a great question. Lots to think about there.
Indeed. So if you found this deep dive helpful for your understanding, maybe for your UPSC prep, please do give us a like and subscribe for more analyses like this.
And if you have questions or your own perspectives on what this caste census might mean, drop a comment below. We'd be interested to hear your thoughts.
Absolutely. And remember, our discussion today was based on reporting from The Hindu. You can check out their articles for more details. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.